Welcome back at 8:13. For nearly 40 years, the Ronald McDonald House Charities has been known for helping families, but it just started a new chapter with the opening of its new house on Children's Hospital's campus right here in New Orleans. And since opening in December, it's welcomed more than 127 families and counting. Grace McIntosh, Executive Director at Ronald McDonald House Charities of South Louisiana, joins us now with details on all of the success and details on an upcoming fundraiser that you can help them continue the work they do. Grace, good morning. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Kelsey.
So let's first talk about, you mentioned December was a busy year, but in a good way, a busy month, but in a good way for you guys. Talk about what was happening in New Orleans and in Lafayette.
Right. Well, in December, we opened two new facilities. One, of course, was the house located here on the campus of Children's Hospital, and the other one was in Lafayette at Our Lady of Lourdes, a family room. And so we went literally overnight from 15 rooms in Mid-City to 25 rooms now in both New Orleans and Lafayette. So it was a very busy month.
And that the family room at that hospital in Lafayette, it's again a room in the hospital. So families
Correct.
can leave from their child's room where they're getting care down the hallway, essentially, to go down the hallway to sleep.
Exactly, at Our Lady of Lourdes, Women's and Children's.
And then the one here, I mean, they're just steps away as opposed to having to worry about, you mentioned parking and that commute to see their child and make sure they're okay. They're right there on Children's campus.
There were a number of challenges to our beautiful house on Canal Street, and now those challenges have simply been eradicated. And so it's just been a real blessing. And we have been literally from day one full, and unfortunately with a waiting list.
But you guys are trying to work to make sure you can continue helping these families,
Absolutely.
possibly expand to help more families.
Absolutely.
A fundraiser coming up this Saturday that really easy for anyone and everyone to participate in. Tell us
Right.
about that fundraiser.
Well, if you were like most children, you grew up with this pop tab thing that you did for charity, and so we're calling it the Pop Tab-a-Palooza. And it's at our two EMR recycling centers, one right here on Lafitte and the other one in Lafayette. And not only pop tabs, but you can bring literally any metal. And for those 2 hours, 10 to noon this Saturday, they will do all the proceeds of any metal that you bring in to Ronald McDonald House.
So a good time to clear out the house, clear out the yard, clear out the shed, and all for a good cause if you bring it to those two locations. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, I know kids are out of school now, starting to get out of school, graduations. People are always looking for volunteer opportunities. Are you all looking for volunteers?
Volunteers are our lifeblood, and so yes, we absolutely do. And if you want to go to our website, which is www.rmhc-sla.org, they can find all the information on how to support us through volunteerism, our events coming up, because we have a snowball event coming up next month. We just have a lot going on. They can find it all there.
And always looking for help. And this weekend, a really easy opportunity for folks. Just back to that house really quickly. I think it's just a beautiful thing. You guys have this home on the Children's Hospital campus, and you were telling me how many people you can house in this building. It's really awesome.
Well, we have 22 rooms, and they all have at least two beds. So we can have really almost about 65 people. And so you can imagine the life that is now in this beautiful house. And it's a gorgeous, gorgeous facility. We had local artists from New Orleans put art on the walls, and it's a beautiful, soothing location, and it literally is steps away.
And hopefully that location being so close and so beautiful takes a little bit of the burden off the parents who are dealing with sick children. Give us your website one more time for details on everything you guys have going on these days.
RMHC-SLA, so Ronald McDonald House Charities of South Louisiana.org.
Well, Grace, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Best of luck with that fundraiser.
Thanks so much.
Hopefully you get tons of volunteers this summer.
Okay, thank you.